I work for RabbitMQ. I'm a core team member. And this talk is harmful GOTOs, premature optimization, and programming myths are the root of all evil. I hope you enjoy it. The slides are already online on speaker deck. And I have a very long blog post full of references from where this talk is based on. The slides are there, so yeah, if you just want to attend another talk, this is your right moment because you can read it there. So myths. A myth is a widely held but false belief or idea according to Google, which is the source of truth these days. And another definition from dictionary.com is a myth is an unproved or false collective belief that is used to justify a social institution. This one, I think, is the most important one from the two definitions, because thanks to this programming myth, we institutionalize many things that are maybe not so correct. I could say some outrageous ones, like when people talk about the 10 times developer, and based on that, they have this very bad person on the team that can crash the whole team, but he's a 10-time developer, so we are not going to fire him, of course. That's your myth right there, killing your company, basically. Anyway, there's a very cool book from Umberto Eco. He's an Italian guy and writes really amazing books, very well researched. I don't have an idea how many books his library has, but it seems to be pretty big. And in the book of Legendary Lands, he goes all over myths that we have mostly on the Western world. And they are quite interesting, and one of them is the myth of the flat Earth. Why I'm talking about this? Because sometimes we developers think we are really super rational people, that we don't believe in myths, everything is proved, we have a unit test per line of code which is proving what we are doing, blah, blah, blah. Of course not, but. And the myth of the flat Earth is a very widely held belief that sometimes, it's not true. But for example, in north side of the world, in South America, when you go to school, they teach you, maybe when you're a kid, this is a nice kid story for what Columbus was doing. And the idea of the myth of the flat Earth is like, what was Columbus trying to prove to the elders in Salamanca when he was trying to come to the Indies? And basically, he was trying to prove to the people back then that the Earth was not flat, that he saw some ship going down in the horizon, so he had like this big idea that the Earth was round and whatnot. But actually, this is a myth from this book that tried to make a nice Hollywood representation of Columbus times, but back in the 19th century. And this book was even used by people in the rational part of the world to justify the evolution theory. To combat the church that didn't want to have the evolution theory, they tried to bring up this other myth. So let's combat myths with more myths, let's say. And yeah, it's very interesting. Whatever the point is, nobody back in the days believed in that thing, even though today we keep hearing about these things. This guy is the one that tried to bring the idea that the world had that shape. But in the Middle Ages, nobody believed that because probably they opened their windows and they saw it was not true. Anyway, do we have similar myths in computer science? I believe we do. For example, if you don't have a unit test, you don't have any working code. You know that. Procedure calls are very expensive. Don't use functions and functional programming because you will call too many functions that will be too slow. So don't do that. NoSQL is faster than traditional DBs. If you are following the Hacker News-oriented development, you know that you need you put NoSQL and then your thing is faster than whatever you had before. The 10 times engineers. Servers are cheaper than engineers. This is really common held belief that, yeah, it's cheaper to just deploy some new machines, but who's going to maintain them? Who's going to maintain the infrastructure? Who's going to maintain the network? What happens when something goes down? Yeah, you could span to Amazon, and then Amazon is down, and your website is down. Who owns your availability, basically? So, yeah, it can be true, it cannot be true. I don't like to stay in either side of the discussion, I think. So, yeah, if we want to speak about myths, or give a mythological example about this. Sorry for the believers, but Jesus said that, sorry, I need to hold this. Jesus said that if you are either cold or warm, but the lukewarm will be spit out of my mouth. So I will probably be spit out of this guy's mouth because I don't believe in either side of the story. Anyway, in the beginning, why I'm giving this talk, why I got into this topic. There was an issue in a PHP library. Yes, you heard right, I said PHP. Where this person asked, may I ask if there is a reason why you prefer using GOTO instead of function recursion on some library? This is the whole code of the library. It's a joke by this guy, Igor Videla. He's a Swiss guy that likes to make jokes on programming things. And this is a problem this person had, like beginning, go to beginning. This function basically will retry something n amount of times. After that, we'll throw a fail into hard exception. And yeah, that's the whole library. And somebody else say, why are you using GOTO? GOTO is evil. You're going to burn in the ashes of hell. So Igor, he's also a very well-known guy in the PHP community. He knows all the internals of the PHP engine. And he said, when you give this code to the PHP compiler, it will generate these opcodes that basically GOTO in PHP is faster because the PHP engine, you guessed it, is not optimized. And it doesn't optimize function calls. So recursion will just crash the whole thing. And Igor even cites the paper by Guy Steele called Lambda, the ultimate GOTO. Back in the 80s, Guy Steele was already trying to erase some myths about calling functions is too expensive, and that paper, Lambda, the ultimate GOTO, is about those myths. So Igor knows about all this research, whatever, he's just explaining and yeah, having fun with people. Maybe it's not good, I don't know. And this is what happened. Go to flameware.gif, you can really have your coffee now because this goes forever. People kept like, whatever, throwing quotes from Dijkstra, from Abraham Lincoln, I don't know. It's terrible and keeps going and going and going and keeps going.
Someone is wrong on the internet.
Exactly. It's longer than the 6 lines of this library, I mean. Okay? Still not over? So I had a question, like, I was going to screenshot this thing, but yeah, it's so long I had to make a GIF. Anyway, I asked somebody here in this discussion throw the Dijkstra paper, GOTO is considered evil. You don't know that, like, or harmful, or whatever the word is. So let's see. That's the paper people were throwing out, and say, okay, let's finally read that paper. The paper, again, sorry if I keep putting the Bible in front, but it's like the Bible, everybody quotes it, nobody read it. The same with GOTO statement considered harmful. And then I kept Googling, and of course, when you Google about computer, the source of truth is Stack Overflow. And on Stack Overflow, there is this discussion saying that, is it still considered harmful? And it quotes some paper from Donald Knuth. And also mentions that never let Swiss people, that they appear to be, I live in Switzerland, they appear to be very polite and whatnot, but when you give a Swiss guy, editor of this magazine, a case against the GOTO statement, you add the Nicholas Wirth factor there, and you get GOTO statement considered harmful, because without a flameware, he will not be able to publish this on this magazine. So he had to flamewareize it, let's say. Okay? But actually, in this paper, Structured Programming with GOTO Statement from Donald Knuth, you can find very interesting letters that Knuth exchanged with Dijkstra about that GOTO thing, and this is evil or it's not evil and whatnot. And this motivated this talk, which is a Papers We Love talk, actually, about this paper. So, yeah. In this paper, you can find this thing from Dijkstra himself. That was something that he sent to Knuth. Please don't fall into the trap of believing that I am terribly dogmatical about the go-to statement. I have the uncomfortable feeling that others are making a religion out of it, as if the conceptual problems of programming could be solved by a single trick, by a simple form of coding discipline. That's Dijkstra there, but of course it's easier to just read go to consider harmful than to actually go further. And I think this is the problem with the search for silver bullets, which is also another paper. And today, this can be translated into microservices. If your architecture is wrong, just put microservices.js, and you are good to go, I guess. Testing, if you test, your code is perfect. There are no bugs, nothing. If you are agile, of course, you ship on time. That's every company not shipping on time is not doing agile, basically. That's in case you didn't know. Performance tricks, you just change that thing. Like in PHP, you remove double quotes, you put a single quote, your code is, I don't know how many thousand of times faster. Not. And no SQL, I mentioned already. And I work with RabbitMQ. I also mentioned message queues. Some people think they will throw Rabbit, Kafka, or whatever in their infrastructure, and scalability will come like out of the box in the package. That doesn't happen. We need to think as well. So yeah, we are constantly looking for silver bullets, and I don't think that will happen ever. There's people even beating the CAP theorem with their own new silver bullet, which this is why we have this video.
You can't beat CAP because it only means one thing. It's a proof, right? That's real. That's real. You can prove things. It's real. But
yes, you can prove things in mathematics and in computers, and trying to keep beating the CAP theorem is like, yeah, cool story, bro. And this is from Freddie Brooks, the paper No Silver Bullet. He is the one, I think, from the 10 Times Engineer or the mythological mammoth, or I don't know how the paper is called, or book. And there is no single development in either technology or management technique which by itself promises even one order of magnitude improvement within a decade in productivity, in reliability, or simplicity. Unless, Joe, you're using Erlang, but if you're not using Erlang, then this doesn't apply to you. So this paper is really good because it has a lot of use cases of people that thought they were finding a silver bullet and gloriously failed. So yeah, it's cool to read it. Now, the paper from Knut, Structured Programming with GOTO Statement, has an introduction. All this correspondence with this, Dijkstra, and so on is there. Then there is a nice whole thing about the elimination of GOTO statements. It's using the program algo, and Knut is debating himself, like, should I keep this GOTO here? Should I remove it? Why it's good to remove it? And then later, but actually I need to introduce GOTO, otherwise this algorithm will be super slow, and blah, blah, blah. And some conclusions. That's the structure of this paper. It's very long for Twitter time, so it's like 40 pages. If we are using to read 140 charts, this is not good, but intro and conclusions are probably the two areas you care about the paper, because I'm pretty sure you're not optimizing our goal code today. But what is interesting about this is this thing here. I'm pretty sure everybody in the audience can read this part. While I less than m, and the I index of this array doesn't equal x, do I, which increments I, right? Everybody can read that? Yes? No? But Knut says the AND operation used here stands for McCarthy's sequential conjunction operation. This is from the paper, the original Lisp paper, this thing he's quoting there. So why does Knut need to explain what AND means? Like, what year is this paper from? It's from 1974. That's the same year the Germany World Cup, that the East Germany beat Germany in the World Cup, the only time they meet each other. A year that England didn't qualify to the World Cup. Sorry. But everything is World Cup based in my world, so there's no World Cup this year. I don't know what year it is. 1 year after the World Cup. Yeah, so that's 1974. When, for example, Barbara Liskov is trying to explain the world that it's good to have abstraction, to have data types, that this thing you're popping things from and putting things in on the top is called a stack. And you maybe can abstract this whole idea, like, wow, like mind-blowing. But people were against her and the researchers when they presented, like, you could program with abstract data types. Logic programming was around the corner. Yes. I don't know who was that. 1969, Planner came in MIT and Prolog in France, which basically they misnamed Erlang. That should have been called Erlang directly, right? And the good research place, go to this website, has tons and tons of papers from all the research labs from MIT. It's really good, that website, if you like to read all stuff that nobody cares today. So you can find Planner and the Birth of Prolog paper somewhere there. BASIC. It was 10 years since BASIC came. It was the first programming language I used in a Spectrum back in the days. In the third world, we only had Spectrums. And yeah, that was really cool. So 10 years of BASIC. Ethernet was a thing. You could connect computers finally, probably. I don't know what was happening before. And Unix was released to the public by Steve Jobs and the other guy. What was? No, sorry. Don't burn me, please. Then the big O notation, if you read books or papers before this year or around these years, you will see that all the algorithms, they count steps. They say to do whatever in queuing or inserting an element on a tree, you have this many leaves, so it will take this many steps. But in 1976, Donald Knuth, the new messiah of computer science, he brought the big O notation to the table. Which actually, in mathematics and mostly number theory, this is a thing from a German book from 100 years before. There were no World Cups back then. Think about it. And the O from this is Ordnung, which in German means order, of course. So yeah, the O is from Ordnung in German. That's the original big O thingy, where the guy explains the notation and whatnot. And yeah, there is a website that also has all these scans of old books, if you want to read it. RSA came also in 1977. So they were starting to do public key encryption and so on. The difference is this guy in the States, they managed to make money out of it. Some dude in England, he discovered this even before them. But the secrecy from the government didn't allow him to publish anything. But 30 years later or so, he got a nice diploma for his house, while the other guys have a nice bank statement from their RSA discovery. So, and 1978, time polymorphism was starting to be a thing. Yeah, so this is more or less the area when this paper was written, a time where computers were scarce, where you have to go to some university to get some computer time. Having a home computer was probably a hobby. So with that in mind, then think about Knuth, which is trying to write, still is trying to write the art of computer programming with very optimized algorithms to run as fast as possible on those machines. So yeah. Long story short, there were non-personal computer, public encryption, a new thing, structured programming was all the rage. Yeah, people were writing papers that you have to even write just a function, not abstract data types. Yes, and now if we keep going with the paper, we start seeing where Knuth is going. Like most of the running time in non-IO bound program is concentrated in about 3% of the source text. That's something he says. And if he said it is true, we know that. Experience indicates that nearly everybody has the wrong idea about the real bottlenecks in his programs. This is from his Turing Award lecture. We should forget about small efficiencies, say about 97% of the time. Premature optimization is the root of all evil. There we reach it, and we don't do any more optimizations ever. I call this the Godwin law of optimization discussions. Like, if somebody is trying to optimize something, you just, premature optimization is the root of all evil, Abraham Lincoln, whatever, and it's good. But there is a paper. This was not a tweet from Donald Knuth. be clear, there is a paper being written which says, yet we should not pass up our opportunities in that critical 3%. A good programmer will not be lulled into complacency by such reasoning. He will be wise to look carefully at the critical code, but only after that code has been identified. Yeah, identify your bottlenecks and whatnot, but don't just like drop the Godwin law bomb and no more discussions. Yeah. The universal experience of programmers who have been using measurement tools has been that their intuitive guesses fail. So always profile. The paper keeps going. There is a lot of GOTO elimination with focus on performance and readability. Thank you, Donald, but we have Java today, so we don't need that. And another thing, like my books emphasize efficiency because they deal with algorithms that are used repeatedly as building blocks in a large variety of applications. Yeah, it's also really cool to care about performance, but think about it. The guy was writing this thing, the original mammoth in library terms, I think. And yeah, if you are already, we are using these super high-level languages, I think we are pretty far from where Donald Knuth was coming from back in the days. We shouldn't merely remove GOTO statement because it's the fashionable thing to do. The presence or absence of GOTO statement is not the real issue. Replace GOTO statements like, we shouldn't merely remove monoliths because it's a fashionable thing to do. The presence or absence of microservices is not really the issue. Do whatever you want to change there with programming things, and it's like we really want to have a thing that we can measure and count, and then, yeah, we are making progress. Everything else is falling apart, but the unit test is green, you know? The question is whether we should ban GOTO or educate against it. I think this is way more important. Because, it's really easy to just have this. You should have 80 line of characters per, 80 characters per line in your code. You should use the curly bracket on the next line. Your if should become a space and then the parentheses, and all these things we can really easily tell other developers to do. They can be icebreakers when we do the code reviews. Your code is wrongly formatted. Hi, Ayanda. We have a love-hate relationship with Ayanda and pull requests. Nothing against him. And yeah, but why don't educate against things, not just forbid? Like, it's easier to ban encryption, like the government is trying to do here, I guess, instead of educating people how to use it. Which brings to the cargo code thing, which some people say this is even a myth, that these guys were building this plane. Some people claim that is also a myth. But if you don't know what cargo cult is, during some war, in some island, they saw that planes were coming, and then suddenly they probably had good crops or whatever the case, and they thought it was because of these planes. So they started building these kind of fake planes to try to keep the crops coming good. So we cargo cult too many things also into daily lives programming. And in another interview, Alan Kay says, like, the biggest problem we have as human beings is that we confuse our beliefs with reality. Really cool presentation from Alan Kay. And my question is, how did we arrive to the status? Of it's easier to just use the technology at the top of Hacker News than actually running our own benchmark, let's say, and see if it works. And Alan Kay also replies that this is about pop culture. I don't know if I have a slide for this. Yes. In the 70s, computers spread out much, much faster than educating unsophisticated people can happen. Thank you, Alan Kay, for calling me an unsophisticated person. But in some sense, he says, like, everybody could access a computer. So a new crops of developer appear. Like in the case of, in my case, I started with PHP. My first PHP script, I had no idea that I had to run a web server to run it. And today I'm giving a talk here. So you can see how low the entrance is to the programming world if you use PHP, or I have friends on the committee of this conference. You have to find it yourselves. But this is also On the other side of the coin, it's a very bad thing from, I would say, to call this unsophisticated people. There is a book called The Information from James Gleick, and it's really interesting how he described the history of computing before computing, or before computers. And he says, like, when the telephone was invented, unsophisticated people, I mean, this is not what he says, he's quoting people from back in the days. The inventors say that unsophisticated people, like women, for example, they will be calling their neighbors and telling, look, what are you going to wear today? And blah, 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 and blah, blah. Like, the people, it's not like women are going to use or misuse the phone for that. We have very important things to use with the phone. Like, I don't know, arrange the next golf game, I don't know. But the problem is that unsophisticated people was the one that made phones actually usable, popular, and that we have it in every home. If it was for the man of science, we would have like a phone on the meteorological center somewhere in wherever it is here, Greenwich, maybe, I don't know, whatever. And there will be, it's raining here, like grab an umbrella, I don't know. But that was their goal or their idea, and I think here is the same. If, yeah, in some case, it's bad that maybe we have people arguing about things they never even study about, but at the same time, it popularized computers. So I'm not sure, Mr. Alan, if, yeah, okay, next.
Sorry, what was the book again?
The Information, James Gleick. And I think this is, today, could be called Twitter Hacker News Oriented Programming. Up to the point, I don't know if you know this, but there is the Tiny Transactions on Computer Science, which seeks papers describing significant research contribution to the field of computer science. Tiny Talks is a premier venue for computer science research of 140 characters or less. This is true, of course, it's a joke, but they have actual reports from the conferences. If you're a Java programmer, I'm sorry, you probably cannot submit nothing there. Only J developers allowed, I don't know. Yeah, but it is a thing that we have today, that, yeah. Which, again, it's like we are in a science, computer science, where we constantly ignore the past. We constantly ignore previous research. Maybe in distributed systems, you find a lot of quoting previous research. You just don't come up with a new algorithm and wing it. But otherwise, we have a lot of new inventions that are old, let's say. Nothing new under the sun, or I don't know how this guy said. But there is always another coin another side of the coin. This guy, George, Mr. George, was kind of racist. The whole book, or the whole passage on the book, says that when experience is not retained as among savages, infancy is perpetual. So he's trying to explain that savages are like kids because they cannot remember the past. So go quote that. It's like when somebody picks a quote from Adolf Mein Kampf, and yeah, you check the sources first. Anyway, this whole status of ignoring past research, of ignoring papers, of not reading, brings us to repeating history again and again. Like, read Thinking Forth. Just read the first 2 chapters, and if you don't see agile there, like straight agile, then I don't know. But it's like Terry Brooks versus Tolkien. I prefer reading Tolkien, you know. Anyway, TDD, everybody thinks that TDD is probably something that came out of Ruby on Rails. I mean, not everybody, I'm pretty sure most of you don't believe that. But yeah, it's like, it's a 10 years old thing. Beginning of the 21st century is when we started doing TDD. There is a blog post which traces TDD back to the 50s. I've seen papers about unit testing from the end of the 70s. There is a very good book, Software Testing Techniques, by Boris Besia, which is from beginning of the 80s. And there are all the techniques there. But of course, just bury that thing, write a blog post, get to the top of Hacker News, you're a new inventor. Woo. No. This one is one of my favorites. Today, everybody says you have to be offline first. You have to target mobile and whatnot. Primarily disconnected. Disconnected, offline. First, primarily. Reverse the order of the words. And the whole justification for primarily disconnected is the same marketing that offline first is doing. I have friends on the offline first camp, so I'm not. It's cool that they are bringing this to attention. But yeah, in this paper, Ficus Replication is a paper about replication, and this person is explaining that, yeah, you are on your office, you're working there. How will it be so nice that you grab your computer, you go home, and in you're logging into your computer there, and everything is synchronized and offline, and you can keep working and whatnot. Next day, go to the office, and everything is synchronized again. Wow, super cool idea. It's from end of the 90s. So, Dijkstra has to say that in 1968, the communication of the ACM published a text of mine under the title, "The GOTO Statement Considered Harmful," which in later years will be most frequently referenced, regrettably, however, often by authors who had seen no more of it than its title. So, that's what Dijkstra thinks about that particular paper. Raise your hand, sorry, I'm not making fun of anybody. Who has read this paper? 2 persons? You heard about GOTO statement considered harmful before? You probably were not using GOTOs. You saw a GOTO and you puked, probably. I was puking all the time, but yeah, like. Now tomorrow on the Times, proliferation of GOTOs. And I think this happens because of the Fahrenheit 451 problem or issue. You know this book, right? You read this book? The cool thing is that at some point, Mr. Montag is discovering that he starts to regret that they are burning books. Basically, houses don't set on fire anymore. They avoid this problem from society. So bombermen, instead of going out of business, they start burning books because why not, right? And the problem is like when the main bomberman is explaining Mr. Montag why they are doing it, is that classics like Homer or like the Iliad or Shakespeare books or whatever, people were just cutting them down to 15-minute radio shows, then cut again to fill a 2-minute book column, then wind it up at last as a 10 or 12-line dictionary resume, and finally just tweeting them. And so, because people just don't care about reading you're happy tomorrow, you're drinking wine there, with this finger like this, and you say to be or not to be, that is the question. We never read Hamlet, I read it, but whatever. But we have the thing to quote about Hamlet and things that we are smart. So because of that, people start burning books, basically. And I think also related to memes, which are very popular today, like the wrong memes, not the one from this book, which Richard Dawkins, which again, we have the same problem. People think that a meme is some face with a funny face and some text on the up and on the bottom. No, that's not a meme. A meme is an idea that is spread, and that is the same way that genes are spreading our characteristics to other people. So, in this book says that a meme has to have the ability to be easily replicated. So it probably has to be small. There shouldn't be too many complicated things because otherwise when we replicate the idea, we'll probably change and mutate and whatnot. And I think for us it's the same. It's easier to memorize a tweet or base our research on the top Hacker News post instead of actually taking the job and the work of going through whatever field we want to read more about. So, nearly the end. This is at the end of the paper where Knut is making conclusions about it. And he says that there has been far too much emphasis on elimination, on GOTO elimination, instead of on the really important issues. People have a natural tendency to set up easily understood quantitative goals, like the abolition of jumps, instead of working directly for a qualitative goal, like good programming structure. I mentioned this before. It's easier to count charts in a line than to actually think what we need to do to have proper code. Another question, how many of you know what refactoring is? How many of you have read the book about refactoring from Fowler? Okay, not bad, pretty cool. I think this is really important because sometimes imagine you go to your manager, you push for refactoring, you have no idea what refactoring really is, you just hear it's a cool thing, one headline on Hacker News. You fail to deploy refactoring to your company, it has a very bad reputation in your company, and then your code is doomed. Why? Because instead of doing research and trying to instruct people on what refactoring was and what are the good practices, you just winged it because we know enough. I don't need to read. I'm super smart. Why am I going to grab a book and read what's inside there? I just know that refactoring is good, and we're going to implement it in our company. Sorry, but you will probably fail if you do that. Yeah, read is good. We should strive most of all for a program that is easy to understand and almost sure to work, but at least it's easy to understand. And in another paper that Books quotes, actually, there is an archive of everything that is on Newt's library, and there was a project from some university, Stanford probably, to scan everything. They scan something from a magazine, which Newt has no idea who wrote it. He thinks it's written by Moore, but he doesn't know. Anyway, it says, no one has seen a program which the machine could not comprehend, but which humans did. Long story short, write for your fellow humans. Don't write things for the computer. Once you know this is slow, okay, improve it, whatever you have to do. But thing number one, a human should be able to read that program. And the paper, this one is really good, 1950-something, and it's telling all the problems we have today programming. And Distra says, we had better see to it that the computer industry does not kill computing science. We are too focused on making money, but we probably forget about the computing science side of things. Thanks.
We actually have time for some questions.
Oh.
I'd like to take them. So, are there any questions? I have one.
Yeah.
If I may. I really enjoyed the talk, and I kind of agree fully. But how do you reconcile that with that? Surely not everyone should have to do all the original material reading all the time. Otherwise, there's no advancement.
Yeah.
There has to be some summarization. You have to at some point have a summary that's enough, so you can move on.
For me, that's the way to go forward in science, what you should say, to have a summary of things and take it. But just check what are the sources of that author or that authority. Some core developer on RabbitMQ getting to the top of Hacker News is not a source of authority. That's my point. I see many times people going, for example, in the RabbitMQ versus whoever that end their product in MQ. And people say, but this is faster. And that guy that is really well-known say this faster. So that's argument by authority. You know, that's my problem. Not the grab whoever's book or I don't know what and be fine with that research. Otherwise, you will do this depth first search forever, and you will never end reading the next paper and the next paper and the next paper. But the problem for me is believing too much in authorities, in short sentences, and on Google publishing how PHP should be made performant and with better performance, and removing double quote for single quote. If that's your problem in PHP, like what are you even doing using PHP? Like, that's the Erlang virtual machine is slow. Maybe then RabbitMQ is slow. How many messages per second you need? I need 200 per minute. I throw my computer away. Like the other day, some queue system, I don't care which one, was bragging on Twitter that they managed to do 100,000 no-ops per minute after some performance improvement. Like, if we want to believe these things, okay, fine, but there's research behind it. So another question, so you can hear me ranting? No? Yeah, Joe?
Well, just a comment. Knut's paper didn't. Well, he did say that 3% of the
Huh?
code were all 4%. But he also said that you should measure, and if you're
Identify.
didn't go through 10 to 10 clock cycles, there was no point in optimizing anything anyway. So that's one of his key points, that you should measure,
Yeah?
and then you don't need to optimize. Most programs don't need to optimize. Most programs didn't need to optimize. The point about optimization was on. Well, I think it was wrong, but the point about optimization is make it correct before you make it fast. It's in the wrong order. You think about optimization first rather than correctness.
Yeah, I think it's very...
Incorrect programs will be made arbitrarily quickly, and any fool can write a program that's incorrect.
And it's, as also Knut says in the same paper, it should be easier for people to read the code. I should be certain that these things works as a business rule dictates. Performance, then, if it's slow, I will get there.
About people, I think a good criteria is, can you understand the code you wrote a year ago? Because sometimes I write code, I can't understand it a month later.
Yeah, I saw...
Because you're in different modes.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Got another comment. So your argument was basically that the wrong sound bites led to the wrong religions to lead us astray. So perhaps we should choose the sound bites more carefully or not?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't...
To make an argument that is so condense ourselves because we know we can't really prevent having someone misrepresent the work that we do, then basically try to make the executive summary represent what we actually want to say.
I think it's very hard to get to that point because at some point people will misinterpret it, and what are you going to do about it? But I don't want to be forcing things on myself or my colleagues that are just myths. That's my goal. I don't care about whatever person. I mean, just check the comment of this blog post on Hacker News, or where I made this thing called closure, which is closure with square brackets, and people was really angry and like, what are you doing? And it was like April 4th, the first full whatever thing. So people didn't even bother reading. Or now, right now on Hacker News, the post about Elixir Phoenix being super like I don't know how many millions of WebSocket connections in blah, blah, blah. And somebody went to the comment and said, you are wrong, we are wrong. And then the author of the blog post, it's pretty clear, your comment, you just read the first paragraph of the thing. So they do something very well documented with even screenshots of tweets, and people will still misinterpret it and do, what are you going to do? Sorry, John?
I think there's another problem with that. That's bad answers to questions crowd out the correct answers. Because I've seen many examples of things which are, I mean, for example, the LA made it on, not LA questions,
Yeah.
trap X,
TrapX is, yeah.
There were some errant questions there, and I never answer those because I think, well, I'll just wait and see if somebody else answers, and if somebody else answers, I don't bother to answer them. And I got very low points because I don't answer many questions. And so somebody they get very high points by answering first.
Yeah.
The algorithms give them extra preference.
Yeah.
The first answer is incorrect. And I figure out fuming, and I'll send in a thing and say, no, that's just completely incorrect.
Yeah, on the RabbitMQ Stack Overflow, some...
Incorrect answers, and there's a lot of discussion about them.
Yeah.
And then people who write correct answers, Rich O'Keefe writes in the LA mailing list, and there's a bit of discussion. Rich O'Keefe writes the answer, and then it all stops. Like the definitive statement. And those bad answers crowd out the good ones, because the Google indexes are different.
We'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thanks.